Hey there, YouTubers. Thanks for joining me today. So the other day, I'm driving down the road and I'm towing my trailer, and I look behind me and I notice none of my running lights are on. And I thought that was odd, but I've had some issues with my lights in the past. So I just kind of took it easy, made sure I could get all the way home. So that way I could look at it and see exactly what was wrong. Did I just leave it unhooked? Did it come loose? I've been having some ground issues. So that's what we're going to do today. We're going to take a look at what happened, and we're going to spend some time fixing it and doing a couple upgrades. Let's take a walk outside and see exactly what happened. So, as I said, my lights went out. Um, I wasn't really sure what was going on. But it's not a super uncommon thing. Like I said, I have been having some issues with grounds. You can see here this little wire nut. Um, we were making a tow up north to pick up some stuff from my father-in-law's house. And um, right as I was about to leave, I accidentally stepped on the cabling and ripped the ground out. So, last minute fix, I had to throw on a wire nut. Knew it wasn't going to be permanent, but I thought, well, maybe that's my first culprit. Um, the second thing is I've been using a 7-pin to 4-pin adapter for a number of years, and it's worked okay. But I noticed that sometimes um, the connector would be loose in there. I definitely didn't like that idea. Lastly, my 4-pin connector, I always lay across the frame when I'm not using it. And so I knew the wires, they get some UV, they get brittle. Maybe I just broke a wire somewhere. Lo and behold, when I got out of the car and I went to check, um, sure enough, the 4-pin connector had come unconnected, and this is what was left of it. Um, it had been dragging on the road for quite some time and is pretty well trashed. Let me bring you in here to take a closer look at that. So here is the wire nut that I was telling you about. Obviously, we want to fix this. This is not a good ground. It's not a good option. And it's just a matter of time before this wire breaks or this wire nut comes back off. So we want to do a permanent fix on that. And then here is our 4-pin connector. As sad as it is, I think it has met its match and is not going to make it any more days, not worth fixing. So, like I said, this is the 7-pin to 4-pin adapter that I've been using for a number of years. And it has worked okay. You can see there's some corrosion in there. I just leave it in all of the time. And when I start looking at these pins, even though there's a cover, um, it's not a real, there's some corrosion and there's not a real good seal on there. Not as good as if the actual cover there were kept closed and I only opened it when I put my pin in. I've also been running some work lights with an internal battery on the trailer. Now, unfortunately, because of that not running a 7-pin connector, I'm not able to charge the battery using my tow vehicle. So what that means is, there you can see my battery box. Usually before I have to take this on trips, this internal battery that runs my interior trailer lights, my rear work lights, and a side floodlight, I usually have to charge the battery, and I usually keep an extra battery with me just so I can swap them out quickly to make sure I got enough power. So I think we can fix all of those issues today. And while we're at it, I want to make these work lights run off of a switch so I could use them as work lights, or I could use them as reverse lights, which is something I've never been able to do. And we're going to do that by swapping that 4-pin connector out with a 7-pin connector. That'll allow me to charge the battery from the connector or from the tow vehicle. Here you can see my exterior floodlight. But we're going to use that 7-pin connector so that way we can charge the battery using the tow vehicle. And as well, I want to clean up the way I lay my chains. I want to add an accessory here that's going to hold my plug so it's not left laying out on the trailer where it can get damaged like this. Let's go look at the parts. Okay, so here you can see the parts that I got. I got a 7-pin trailer connector. I picked this up actually on clearance for $20 at our local Camping World. This one's really nice. I like it because it does have some little LED lights in it. So it will show me when it's plugged in that there is power running through the connection on each post. So that's kind of nice. I got this junction box. Now we're going to put this junction box on the inside by my trailer box. That will allow my trailer cable to run all the way inside the trailer and protect it from the elements. And then that I picked up on Amazon. And then I also picked this up on Amazon. Like I said, this is going to help me with my cleanup of my trailer. So this is a spot here to hang my safety chains, and then a bracket that will hold my plug, just like that, and allows water to run out the bottom. So you can see the holes where it's relieved for water release. That will protect my plug and help it last a long time. And the nice thing is this just mounts right to a trailer jack, which is already on the rig. And then finally, I didn't mention it earlier, but I do have a busted taillight lens, and so I'm going to go ahead and swap that out. This is another lens that I picked up off of Amazon. So I'm going to use just basic hand tools for this, nothing that anyone would not have in their toolbox. These are some cheapy wire connectors, as well as some heat shrink tubing. So let's get after it. So I'm going ahead and adding some anti-abrasion cloth over top of this plug. Even though this plug is sheathed, you know, it's going to be outside. It's going to see a lot of vibration, a lot of bouncing around while this trailer is moving. This cloth just is going to help protect it from UV. It's going to help protect it from vibration. And it's just going to help it last a lot longer. This is just something I do. You don't have to do this, but I pick up these rolls relatively cheap off of Amazon. I use them on all my wiring projects. I would suggest that you pick some up and just keep them in your shop. And it works real easy. All you have to do is just push it together and it expands to slide over the wiring. And then I just secure the M with the zip tie like that. And then you're done. Before you put the zip tie on, I use just a propane torch to heat up the ends and meld them together so they won't continue to fray. If you see, the more I expand this, you can see the ends already starting to fray here. So again, you want to be careful because you don't want to melt your wires. But I actually will normally cut mine a little bit long just so I can heat that up and I know that I'll be okay. So what I'll do now is I'll cut it back here. I'll go ahead and place my zip tie on it, cut it, and then meld it down to the zip tie. And that's going to look like this. So to cut this once it's already on, I just expand it, and then I take my side cutters and just cut all the way around. And again, I'm leaving it a little bit long, but only as long as what the sheathing is. So that way when I heat it up with the torch, it's going to come right back up to where that zip tie is. And then when you have these little hairs like this, you just nip those off. They don't hurt anything. Nip those off. You want to be careful when you do this with the torch. Obviously, you don't want to melt your wires. But just a quick little touch. You can use a cigarette lighter or a little butane torch. I just tend to use my propane torch because that's what I have available right now. And then after I heat it up, I'm only heating it up a little bit, and then I kind of push everything together and slide my zip tie down. And once we nip the end of the zip tie off, there you go. There's your finished end. And that wire is going to be protected. If I slide it through sheet metal, it's not going to tear up my sheathing. But there's tons of things when you're routing a wire that the wire can get caught up on, and this just helps it slide through. So that's just something I like to do. Okay, so now we're back and we're ready to mount our safety chain bracket. It'll go right here on the trailer jack like this. This is kind of nice. They actually included the bit for an impact or just a basic Allen wrench. So let me bring you in here close so that way you can see what I'm doing. Okay, so the first thing that we want to do is we got to remove these bolts, or screws. And they included this adhesive backed rubber plate so that way if you had nice paint, you're not tearing up your paint, and it just makes it a little tighter to mount on your trailer jack. We want to do ours right about here in the middle. Obviously, my paint's not that nice, so it really doesn't matter, although it is going to tighten up the grip on the accessory. So I'll go ahead and add these to the trailer jack. I just want to try to get it as straight as possible. Doesn't have to be perfect. And then there's a second one for the back side. Okay. Once those are mounted, we're going to put our trailer jack accessory up here. You want to make sure that it's mounted high enough that you're not interfering with your ball lock or anything. And we're going to slip the back up there, and you want to start these screws. This is all aluminum, so you want to make sure you start these screws by hand, because they are stainless screws, and stainless in aluminum will gall if you get them cross-threaded, and then you ruin your new accessory. So just make sure you start them by hand first, and then you can go back and use the tool. Okay, I can position that where I want it. Go ahead and just snug them up with the impact. Just like putting on a tire, you want to do this kind of in a cross pattern. Again, because if this is aluminum, it will be easy to bend or break. So you just want to take your time with it. And just like anybody who's ever loaded a trailer, before you can finish this, you got to say, that ain't going nowhere. But as you can see, now that we're all finished with that bracket, I can take my chains down off of the tongue. And everything's going to sit in there nicely without dragging on the ground. And it opens up my tongue a little bit, and it keeps the chains from rusting from water sitting. This is how that plug will look when it's put in there. As you can see, it's not going to interfere with anything. The only thing we might do is we might make it just so the bend of our wire stays down, so when we operate our trailer jack, we're not hitting that. So you may have to adjust this up or down just a little bit, just to make sure you're not interfering with your trailer jack. But I think that looks good right now. All right, let's take a minute here to recharge. We're going to focus today on Hebrews 11:1, where it says, "Now faith is confidence in what we hope for and assurance about what we do not see." If you've ever towed a trailer, you know it changes how you drive. You slow down, you leave more space, you check your mirrors constantly. You're responsible for something behind you that you can't always see, but you trust it's there. That's a faith. Before you ever pull out, you check the hitch. If the connection isn't solid, nothing else matters. Chains, lights, brakes, they're all useless without a secure hitch. Our faith starts the same way. It's not about road conditions, it's about who we're connected to. Proverbs 16:3 says, "Commit to the Lord whatever you do, and He will establish your plans." Faith begins when we commit our direction, our load, and our trust to God. Then there's the weight. A trailer quickly reveals whether your vehicle is prepared. Too much load, and you feel it immediately. God allows weight in our lives too, not to break us, but to build us. James chapter 1, verses 2 and 3 says, "Consider it pure joy whenever you face trials of many kinds, because you know that the testing of your faith produces perseverance." Faith isn't just built in the parking lot, it's built under the load. And let's be honest, trailers can sway, wind, bump, sudden moves. It happens fast. Panic makes it worse. The solution is steady hands and small corrections. Spiritually, the same is true. When life pushes us, God calls us to trust Him instead of overreacting. In Proverbs chapter 3, verses 5 and 6, it says, "Trust in the Lord with all your heart and lean not on your own understanding. In all your ways submit to Him, and He will make your paths straight." Finally, nobody becomes a great tower without experience. You learn by doing, by paying attention, adjusting, and growing more confident over time. Faith works the same way. God doesn't grow us by keeping us parked. He grows us by calling us to follow Him down the road. The main idea here is faith isn't about seeing what's behind you. It's about trusting the connection, respecting the load, and staying steady as God leads the way. Lord, thank you for walking with us on the road we travel. Help us commit our lives fully to you. Trust our connection to you and carry the weight you allow without fear. Steady us when the road gets rough and grow our faith mile by mile as we follow you. Amen. Now let's get back to our project. As I stated, I did have a busted taillight lens. This is the taillight lens. Didn't feel like I needed to cover that here. It's 2 Phillips screws, one in the top and the bottom, but we've got that all replaced, so that part of the job is taken care of. Okay, so the next thing we need to address is this 4-pin connector. Yeah, it's trash. So no reason to keep it around. We're gonna just go ahead and cut the wires. Okay, so been down under the car, getting ready to fish the wires, and let me show you what I'm finding. So first I backed up the car as close as I could to the hitch without actually putting it on. I wanted to see how much cable we have. Obviously you want some slack in this cable to make sure that when you're turning, you're not going to pull anything tight or rip your wires out. My plan was to actually run this under the trailer, down the tongue, under the trailer, and up into the trailer to put the junction box. However, I'm seeing now that I don't have enough length of wire to do that. So, if I pull this wire, take you down underneath. Okay, so there is the hole that we need to get to. I can get to the hole and up in to the hole. Fish this up in there and just let it sit there. Okay, but we're only about 6 inches in there right now. And you can see I do have a little bit of a loop, but not enough that's going to get me up in and mount the box where I want above that battery box. So I could do a couple of things. I could splice the wires. That would allow me to extend them. However, that adds another connection that moisture can get into and deteriorate the system. Or I could just move the junction box to the bottom of the frame, and it is a waterproof box, so that would give me access to be able to connect all my electrical wires and protect it from the elements. The only downside to that is I already pushed that wire up into the hole, so I'd have to figure out how to get that wire back out. Just looking at the box itself, it looks like I got a good spot. Let's go back under the trailer and we'll see what I'm thinking. So my thought process is, if I take this box and I mount it here, you see we're still just as close as we were to that hole, but I can come into the end, right here where my finger is, and be able to connect all of my connections. And there's another opening here that I can come right back out into this hole. As I said, the only downside is then I have to be able to go find those wires that I fished up in there, which I think that I can do. Should not be too big of a deal. So I think this is the route I want to go, is mounting this junction box to the frame here. So I'm going to go ahead and get it mounted, and then I will come back. Okay, I brought everything back in here onto the bench to make it a little bit easier to see while I'm doing the wiring and setting up the box before I permanently mount it. Couple things that I like to do. I noticed that this box, even though it is waterproof, it is plastic, and they give you these self-threading screws. And before I put anything together, I like to take all of the screws and just run them down into the holes. Not tight, just slowly with the impact, because if you don't do that and then you go to put it all together, what you'll end up with is you'll tighten them too much and you can crack that plastic. But by running them down in these holes, especially these little screws down here that hold a little wiring clip on, like this one, those are real easy to snap the plastic, and they don't have a real good pass-through hole on this bracket, which is also plastic. So they're going to thread into that a little bit too. But I've just found that it makes it a lot easier if you go ahead and pre-thread those holes before you're doing your finish mounting. So I've got that all done now. And we're going to look at our wiring. This thing about this box, the reason that I bought this box, they're all color coded, and so it's really simple. You just match the color to color, and then the box part is wired. Now, you do need to know what these colors mean to attach to your trailer lights, but that's really simple as well. Now you can kind of see how we're going to route these, and this allows me to know how far I need to cut each one of these wires. So like the white wire, I'm not going to cut it at all. I will just strip it back, put my connector on there. The black wire, I'll probably do the same, but the yellow wire, obviously I don't need all this excess wire here. So I will cut that back, and that will give me enough wire. Now on the flip side of that, because our blue wire has to come back and our purple or brown wire have to come back, those I will leave a little excess, because you don't want to have a super, super tight bend on there, because that will increase the odds of breaking the wire in the future. I got this really neat pair of strippers last year for Christmas from my mom. And um, I know she said to me, she's like, I don't know how well you'll use these. She knows I really like my ratcheting strippers. Um, but as it turned out, I find myself grabbing these, and more often than anything else, they have several different gauge wires. They'll split wire, split sheathing off. They will do crimping and so many other things, metric wrenches. But for stripping wire, I find that these are, unless the wire gauge gets too big, I tend to grab these more than any other strippers that I have. Okay, so now that we got all of our wires stripped, first thing we want to do is put our furthest one in, which is that white post, right? To make sure that everything else is routed to the right length. As I stated in the beginning of the video, we're going to use these cheaper connectors, and I have this really nice ratcheting crimper. I've wired several vehicles now using this crimper. I hated wiring, but after I got this crimper, I started to not mind it, because my crimps, using this ratchet mechanism, it will not let you over crimp or under crimp the wires. So it's always a perfect crimp. And they have these removable jaws. You just swap them out. So using the white wire, since that's a number 10, we need to use a yellow ring terminal. And again, all we do with this is we place the front end, or the dotted end, towards the back. We slide our wires in so they're all the way into that ring terminal, and then give it a squeeze. Now, if your hand's not strong enough to squeeze that, it's fine. It'll stay there. It holds it. And then you get a better grip, and there you go. That connection will not come back off. And that's why I like it. It also pinches the ends here to help keep some of that moisture and stuff from getting up inside there. So that's why I like these crimpers. So the next thing I did was, as I stated, I did get the junction box mounted. I'm going to take you underneath, show you what that looks like. And then to further secure the wires, so that I'm not putting additional tension on them, I did use some of these electrical conduit P-clamps. I had some in the garage, a couple self-tapping screws. And then that allows me to store my plug here in this new bracket that we added. Or when it's not in storage, I can unwrap it like this and plug it right into my vehicle. And as you can see, there's plenty of slack here for the trailer to swing back and forth without putting that wire in a bind. So this will allow that to stay up off the ground and up off of my trailer tongue. So let's go underneath and let's look at the junction box itself. Okay, so coming underneath the trailer, you can see I was able to get these wires back out, which is good. I'm actually, since I cut them off here, I'm not going to use these wires to actually connect the electrical connections. However, I am going to use those to fish new wires up through the trailer, which I'll show you here in a little bit. Here's the junction box, fully mounted. I did have to drill new holes into my frame to mount the screws. See if you could see those there. And here's the one on the other side. Now, with this kit, it did not supply the screws. I just used some 1/4 stainless bolts with flat washers and lock washers. And then I'm not a big fan of using self-tapper screws unless it's not something critical. And so these I actually inserted nut certs into the frame itself back here, and that allowed me will allow me to remove and replace this junction box at any time if I want without worrying about the thread quality or tearing up threads. So since I had to move the junction box to the outside, like I said, I am going to put a grommet in here. I'm going to run my wires back up through here. So now I'm just making up a wire harness for the lighting. This is just basic 14 gauge automotive wire I picked up at the car parts store. I'm using yellow and green for my reverse and turn signal, red for my other turn signal brake light, and they did not have brown. So since I'm not using the electric brakes, I went ahead and got the blue, and I have some brown duct tape I'm going to put on the ends just to signify that that's the brown for me in the future. So I'm going to go ahead and finish this up. I'm going to put my abrasion cloth on it, and then we'll fish it up into the trailer, and then we'll be able to start looking at our wiring connections. Okay, so now that I have the harness built, I'm going to take some of this black or brown duct tape, and I'm going to wrap this around the end of my blue wire here, so I don't forget in the future that this is actually my brown in my harness. I only really need to do this at the box end, but I will do it at the other end as well, just to make sure that if I go looking or I go looking at a wiring diagram, I know that's my brown wire. You can also go the method of testing it with an ohm meter. However, I feel like if you just put a piece of duct tape on there that's the right color, that should be enough to remember what it is. Okay, so now I have my power and my ground hooked up. If you look at the power wire coming from the battery, I like to use red. The black on a 7-pin trailer wire is actually the auxiliary power, and the white is the ground. I like to use red and black for my power and grounds always, so you can see connected to the white, I have my black ground, and connected to the black, I have my red power. I was hoping to be able to push that power wire. I used a 10 gauge through the same hole as my ground from the battery, but I was not. So I went ahead and punched another hole. I just used a self-tapper here on this side to be able to run the ground. And I'm ready to fish those wires up. As we stated, I just used a little bit more of that brown duct tape and just taped my new wiring harness to the wires that were already coming through the hole, and then I'll feed it up through the hole and put the grommet in, and that will allow me to connect directly to the wires in the trailer. I'm not rewiring the whole trailer. I'm just going to connect to the existing wires up top, and then I'll connect those to the junction box. Well, we didn't quite get the project finished today. There's still some more work to do, and I hope you'll join me in the next video. We'll go ahead and wrap up the wiring and be able to check out how our work went. I thank you so very much for joining me, and I look forward to spending more time with you and sharing God's Word while we work on projects together. Thanks, and have a blessed day.